A spectre that doesn't attack with claws, but with sweet words that kill.
A voice that adults call fever, but children know is real.
Fool. The father rides, denies the horror, and ends with a dead child in his arms.
In every culture, it wears a different mask. Spirit, dark fairy, death itself, but it always steals the most innocent.
The Erlkönig, invisible to the eyes, inevitable for the heart.
Ha 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 ha. And you still believe it was just a poem? No, no, no.
One cold night, in a German tavern, we heard a story that froze the blood. The place smelled of damp wood and bitter beer. Among pipe smoke and flickering candles, an old man began to speak.
And the curious thing, Charles, is that they were Germans. People famous for their hard, serious, distant character. For them, everything has logic. Everything has an explanation. They are not easily carried away by fantasies.
And yet, when that old man spoke of the Erlkönig, no one laughed. No one mocked. The entire tavern sank into silence, as if every word was let falling onto the table.
He said he was traveling with his brother that night. The child, feverish, laughed in his arms as if someone invisible were caressing him. The father swore it was only delirium, but the boy insisted, "The king is calling me."
The old man swore he heard the voice, sweet, honeyed, promises of crowns, games, and caresses. And yet, he only saw fog and branches swaying in the wind. Nothing more.
When he struck the table, tears in his eyes, he said, "We reached the village, but my nephew no longer breathed. And the most terrifying thing was not his confession, but that none of those present doubted it, because in Germany, even the coldest men know that the Erlkönig still lurks."
In the depths of the German forests, among mist and branches that looked like hands, was born one of the most disturbing legends of Europe, der Erlkönig, the Elf King.
A specter that does not scream, does not attack head-on. He seduces, promises games, crowns, pleasures. And while he sweetens with words, he drags children straight into death. Goethe immortalized him in the 18th century. But his shadow is older in Germanic and Scandinavian myths. The spirits of nature could bless or curse, and this one always chooses damnation. He is not a monster of flesh, Charles. He is a whisper among the branches, a voice only children can hear. And when they follow him, they never return.
But legends do not live only in fantasy. They take shape in places and in times where fear breathes with greater strength.
And in Germany, there was a time when the night and the forest were his kingdom.
Germany, late 18th century. Imagine forests covered in mist, so thick it seemed like rotting flesh hanging between the trees. The rural roads were open graves under the moon.
travelers swore they felt footsteps behind them, voices that slid through the air like serpents, and those voices only children could hear them. Promises disguised as tenderness, sweetness that smelled of damnation.
Goethe captured the terror in verse, a father riding with his feverish son, the fever devouring him from within, and the wind mingled with whispers he refused to hear.
And there he was, the Erlkönig, invisible, intangible, murmuring in the gloom. His words were sweet, but every syllable was poison. The boy saw him, heard him, and with every breath was dragged closer to death.
But not all legends remain trapped in the forest.
Some change their skin and become eternal.
The Erlkönig ceased to be a murmur among branches, to become a symbol impossible to tear from memory. Before, the Elf King was only a murmur among peasants, spirits of the forest, that could bring fortune or misfortune, an echo used to keep children away from the dark.
But Goethe dressed him in poetry and chained him to the cruelest fate, fever, illness, inevitable death.
The rural myth became a symbol, no longer living only in peasant tales, but in literature, in the cultural memory of an entire nation.
And Schubert gave him sound. His piano galloped like frantic hooves. His voices tore between father, son, and specter. To hear that work is to hear a child die in his father's arms.
Thus, the Erlkönig ceased to be only a forest ghost and became one of Germany's darkest tales, an immortal warning. In its origins, the Elf King was nothing more than a peasant murmur. Spirits of the forest that could bring fortune or ruin. Whispers told to keep children away from the dark.
But in 1782, Goethe chained him in poetry. He dressed him in words and transformed him into something much more cruel, the symbol of the inevitable. Fever, sickness, death that always arrives.
And in 1815, Franz Schubert pushed it to the extreme. Every piano note is a frantic gallop. Every change of voice is a father denying, a son pleading, a specter demanding. Literature became music. And music, nightmare.
He was no longer a specter, hidden in the mist. He was a mirror of anguish, a warning turned into art, studied in schools, revered as one of the darkest pieces of German tradition.
The Erlkönig stopped being a forest ghost and to become an immortal symbol of death itself. But the more his story's told, the more questions are born in the dark.
Because the Erlkönig is not just a ghost in a poem. He is a riddle that never lets itself be caught.
But the great question remains, who really is the Erlkönig? That figure that slips through the mist, invisible to adults but irresistible to children?
Some describe him as a real spirit, a spectral king ruling the German forests, an ancient entity born of the very earth, feeding on fear and claiming the most innocent. And when he whispers, there is no escape.
Others believe he never existed as a tangible being, that in truth he is the shadow of fever, the personification of childhood illnesses that consumed lives without explanation. A sick child's delirium turned into an eternal spectre.
And then there's the most disturbing theory that the Erlkönig is not fever, nor spirit, nor ghost, but death itself in disguise. A predator who doesn't come with claws or blood, but with sweet words, with promises, with invisible caresses that seduce before they kill.
Ha! The only certain thing is that in every version he always wins. The father writhes desperately, tries to deny the impossible, but in the end, the child dies in his arms. And that scene, repeated through generations, keeps the mystery alive.
So what is he then? A king from another world? A fever's delirium, or the true face of death hidden behind a voice no one wants to hear?
But legends do not survive by what they say, but by how each era interprets them.
The Erlkönig never lets himself be trapped in a single form. He changes face, changes meaning, depending on who looks and on how much fear lies in their heart.
Some call him spirit, others call him metaphor, others delirium. The father arrived, and the child no longer breathed.
The doctor declared fever.
The village declared silence.
The Erlkönig declared custom.